Not only does she have racing in her blood, she was literally brought up at a racetrack, one of just 8 drivers to clinch silverware in the inaugural WSeries season, and this year she's the sole American on the grid. We're in the Grandstand with Sabre Cook.
Well, we are in the Grandstand with Sabre Cook, the 2019 WSeries participant and a 2021 WSeries participant. Hello, Sabre.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for coming on. Now, Sabre, of course, 2020 didn't go to plan for anybody, but how did it go for you? You obviously didn't have WSeries, but how did you fill your time?
Yeah, so it obviously was a year full of just going with the flow. I didn't run WSeries, we just had the esports races, and then I was supposed to do a lot more Indy Pro 2000 races, but obviously COVID kind of changed everyone's economic situation, so budget for that was not what it was going to be, so I only did 2 of those, and then I did a few, a couple SCCA races on top of that, so I didn't do much racing, but at least I did some, and I was very fortunate for that, and just tried to keep busy I did a ton of coaching, got to work with some really amazing young drivers, and stayed busy with other work, such as like some freelance engineering stuff, and just, tried to take it as like a self-development year. We had that quite a good period for ourselves, like in the middle of the year. So just really tried to make the most out of it and turn what could have been a horrible year into a positive.
Now, it sounds like you did your best to be very positive, so that's encouraging to hear. And I've seen on your social media quite a lot of fitness stuff that you've been doing as well. Has it been a big personal development year in terms of your fitness for getting back into racing?
I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily that. I think I'm just being more open about sharing it now. Before I guess I was so busy, like especially with working full time when I was in like 2019, that I was like didn't have a lot of time as much to take content, and so I've really been trying to build that social media and put more content out there and engage with more brands, because I think it helps people, especially during this time when there's like maybe lacking motivation or lacking like knowing how to work out at home. So yeah, I just tried to share more content. It wasn't that I was working out more than I have been. I was just more public about it.
Oh, well, that's interesting to hear. You mentioned just you've been more active as well there. So I'm guessing a little bit of that, and maybe I'm reading between the lines incorrectly, but that maybe ties to being attractive to sponsors, because as we know, motorsport is an awful sport to get into without sponsors. Has that been something that you've obviously struggled with last year? Was that something that's an ongoing struggle for you at the moment?
Yeah. So it's that's day to day. Like, most of my time is spent networking and trying to put, people together, trying to put businesses together and trying to get sponsorship, because obviously don't come from a large amount of resources myself. So I just have to find those amazing people that will, support me and that find businesses that I think I can help put together in order to benefit everyone. So it's a day-to-day thing.
I suppose it's difficult to quantify with 2020 being such a disrupted year, but I've got to imagine your presence on the international stage with WSeries would have certainly helped a little bit from 2019. Is that a correct assumption?
100%. That's definitely it. I mean, WSeries, I would go as far as to say that WSeries maybe saved my career or just took it to the next level, because it was going to be hard with me going over and working for Infinity and Renault to be able to, race, especially if it wasn't with WSeries, like coming back to the States and racing, that would have been very difficult. So it couldn't have come at a better time. I mean, they obviously helped all participants involved boost their profiles, nationally, internationally. So it was definitely a massive benefit. And I really have to thank them for helping me build my brand and my awareness even more.
Well, I bet for you, with all we always hear troubles of people struggling and dropping out of feeder series and so on. So WSeries a big breath of fresh air for you. So did that just completely change the landscape for you in terms of your career up to there, which I do want to go over, but having to not have to worry about that sponsorship, just turning up and doing what you do best? Was that just how you want things to be?
It's the only situation that I've been put in that I don't have to worry about funding, and I just show up and drive. So that for me is a big weight off my shoulders. It obviously allows me to be more focused, less stressed about the money and everything else. So for me, it was like a dream-like situation.
I wish there were more series like that. I'm sure we'd see a lot more talented drivers such as yourself come through as well. So going back way before W Series, you seem to have a lot of racing in the blood from what I understand. Your dad raced bikes, of course. Was anything other than motorsport even an option for you?
Oh, definitely. I used to play basketball and was I was one of those kids that I tried a lot of different sports and was frustrated when I realized I can't do all of them at one time. So, but yeah, I did soccer, I did gymnastics, I did golf. I did some acting stuff. I did plays. So I had a lot of other things going on, and obviously the engineering I stuck with as well. So, but I was really into basketball. I really loved it. And so maybe I would have done something like that or something with golf if I wouldn't have done racing. But racing was definitely the choice that I made, and even though I did have other options.
So I wasn't brought up in the US, but I do know, and I've recently watched The Last Dance actually talking about the basketball. So I do know that sport is just such a big thing in the US, especially going through school and so on. But motorsport, not particularly traditional as a route. It's not like you'll get a scholarship for that. So how did all that come about down the go-karting route?
So for the go-karting stuff, so my dad, he raced motocross and supercross professionally back in the 80s. And he and my mother didn't want my brother and I racing motorcycles. So he found karting after he retired from motorcycles and just liked it. He's obviously an adrenaline junkie, and so got interested in that. And then he and my uncle and my grandfather and an investor, they actually ended up building a karting track where I grew up. And so I couldn't even tell you how much time at the karting track, just running around with my cousins and chasing. We have tons of wildlife and lizards out here, so we would chase lizards and go drive our go-karts and build forts. And so that was really my childhood, was just growing up around here. And I'm actually sitting here now because I came out here for a meeting, so I'm literally at the kart track right now. So I'm in the kart track.
Wow, so it's been part of your life for forever by the sounds of it. You're sitting there now.
Yeah, when I was about 8, when it was the first time I drove, when I was 8.
So it's a little bit older than potentially some people, and that's maybe something that goes further into your career, as you were karting into your 20s, unlike we see some of your competitors in W Series, for example, and a lot of the European feeder series.
That was purely funding related. I just didn't have the money to move the cars. I tried and just wasn't able to put it together until 2017.
So with that then, so the money obviously came at some point, but how different were the worlds? So on track, off track, obviously it sounds like sponsorship's such a big thing. How different was it when you jumped into single seaters rather than the karts?
It was a big jump, especially when I tried to do a few of the USF 2000 races and USF 4 races in 2018. It was obviously, my dad had experience with racing motorcycles, but that was, I was in the 80s. It was a lot. It was still and bikes compared to cars, it's still quite a lot cheaper. So the scale of the budget that you need to do a full season is just, it's crazy. So being able to adjust to that, and then obviously driving wise, there's so much more going on, and there's so many more elements I think that you have to take into account with the car stuff versus the karting. And so just trying to learn that as fast as I could. And it was a bit, it was kind of a hard position to be in sometimes, even still today, because, you can't, selling testing and practice is not sexy. So, sponsors don't want to be like, oh yeah, I'll sponsor you for that test that no one's going to be there. So getting the funding to do the proper amount of practice and testing in order to go to the race and do well didn't happen. So I just had enough. I basically was, you saw the races, and so you get just enough to go to a race, but you show up and you don't have the preparation and like the 20 test days that people sometimes get before the season starts. So it was difficult. I had a big learning curve, and I'm very blessed that later, a couple of years later, I met some amazing people that helped me grow and make that big step up in performance. But there's definitely some things I would have done differently and things I wish I would have known back then.
Right, makes your achievements, I think, even bigger. It makes compared to people who have been racing with a budget behind them, that must feel quite frustrating for you in some regards. But do you feel that when you show up and then you finish ahead of people who've maybe come from more privileged backgrounds, do you feel that's something that you feel, I really do have the talent, and it's something that actually drives you?
I mean, it definitely can, but I try not to really focus on that too much. Like, I'd rather focus on like what I did well, what I need to improve on, and just kind of make realistic goals so we can go into something that I know I don't have as much preparation going into some others. I guess it does, but I think it would be, I don't want to say it wouldn't be almost like not as productive to focus on other people that much, I guess, and base your performances off of them rather than basing it off of your own personal goals and your growth. I think it's much healthier, much more sustainable to look at it that way.
That's a very mature answer, I think. Then, so we go through all the single seater racing that you did. So for us, we're focusing on the W Series and the feeder series to Formula One, but you spent a lot of time, of course, in the US and on the road to Indy route. So for somebody and our viewers as well who might not be so familiar with that road to Indy route, how does that all work? How did you find it? How's it going?
So I found out about it years and years ago, and that had been my aim for maybe since I was 16 to 18. I really found out about that and was like, oh, this looks like this is the ladder to IndyCar. So this is where I need to go. But it's obviously quite a big budget jump from going from when I'm mostly I'm a fully sponsored driver in karting going to the 1000. So it was I tons of young drivers have gone through that and been successful and made it to IndyCar. Like off the top of my head, I could think of Patricia Ward, Oliver Askew, Spencer Piggott. Like they were, the poster childs for making it through every, all the levels and getting into IndyCar. So I was like, okay, this is, the route I need to go. I did a few USF races in 2018 and I was definitely underprepared. Like I said, I just didn't have the testing and everything going into it. So I looking back at it now, maybe I would have tried to do it something different, but it wasn't horrible considering I had no preparation. And then this year last year I did 2 of the IndyCar 2000 races. And those, the first race at Motor America was a little rough because I hadn't had any testing since the lockdown, and so just jumped straight into the car at Road America because I couldn't afford to go to the preseason tests that had been at Mid Ohio the week before. So it was a little bit of a learning curve getting back into, especially at Road America where it's so fast. But then I ended up actually finishing in the top 10 the first 2 races, and then at Mid Ohio was on course to finish in the top 10 again. Had a bit of some miscommunications with the team, but other than that, I'm going to take it as a positive. I mean, I think looking back at it now, I could have, I see places where I could have improved, I could have done better in the short term, but I was pretty pleased on that. And, preseason and going into 2020 when everything was looking up, we did our first preseason test at Homestead, and then we went to go to the first session at St. Pete. And my pace was really good, and everyone was super positive going into it. And then I think I just lost a bit of momentum with that break, with everyone being on lockdown and not being able to be in the car. So it's definitely it's a great program. I'm trying my best to return to it this year in 2021. To obviously keep that progression aimed towards a new car, but it is difficult to pull all the funding together.
Well, appreciate your candidness on it. It really does, open your eyes a little bit into how difficult that motorsport world is. But away from that difficult side of things, you went down through the talent route with the WSeries. So for those who don't know, when you apply for the WSeries, or I don't know, you'll tell us in a second, you might get headhunted for it. The process is a selection day. It's a little bit of, America's Got Talent, but with female-only race drivers. So you didn't have to worry about sponsorship. You just go in and show that you're marketable, show that you are obviously fast in a car, that you can control yourself, that you're safe. How did that come to you, or how did you find out about it? What was the route from you racing to getting into the WSeries?
Yeah, so I think they reached out to me in, I want to say October or maybe September of 2018, and asked for me to submit an application. So I obviously sent in my application and got picked as one of the 60 that went to Austria to go through those 3 or so days of really intense evaluations. And like you said, it was car control, it was smooth driving, it was just awareness, it was consistency, just outright speed, like how well we can speak in front of other people, and how we work in a team, and our mental strengths and everything. So it was a very, very fleshed out evaluation, and I had so much fun, and it challenged you so much that I wish I could go use that as a daily training program. Honestly, it was a lot of fun. But yeah, it was, so that's how it came about. And then I ended up making it to the, so they picked the fastest or the highest evaluated drivers from that, 28 of us, I believe. And we all went to Almeria for a test later on in Spain in the F3 cars. And there was, we just did test sessions, new tire runs. We did fitness evaluations again, like the same, just a little different than what we did in Austria. And it went well. There was 12 of us that got picked early on, and they said, okay, you've got your spot, you're confirmed. So we were like, and then we felt so bad though, because the last day there was 6 spots left. And so the other girls had to do a last day shootout for these 6 spots, and I'm sure it was extremely stressful for them, but it was a really great experience either way. And I think learning how to deal with pressure in situations like that, and just trying to extract the most that you can in those circumstances, was a really, really good learning experience for all of us. So that's how the first of us got into the series.
So for that's such an interesting way of doing things, that you said you were nervous for those 6 drivers on that very last day in the shootout, but that's got to be fairly unique for a race driver who, it's a team sport in an extent, but on a circuit, you're kind of out for yourself. So was that just the most unique experience, to go there and be like, no, I want you guys to do well, even though I want to beat you in a few months' time?
You're right. I guess it is a little bit different, and I don't want to say I think maybe it had to do with the fact that we're all, female, and we got put in groups during all the evaluations in Milk. And so we kind of started to make friendships and, bond with each other, because that was the first time that we've been in a situation where there's so many women that share the same passions as us, have had very similar experiences to us. And so I think it was just a cool thing to be a part of. And we all felt, like we'd found maybe something we were missing, because not all of us get to be around other women that share those same things. So I think that was maybe part of it. We just bonded with a few of the girls and really hoped that, that they would make it through and we could be with them the rest of the season.
And the rest of the season you were with them, indeed. So it was a bit of a rocky start, I guess. And how well do you remember each of those races at this point? Do you remember each one specifically, or does it kind of blur together?
For the most part, yeah. For the most part, I do. I remember the big mistakes that I made, because I'm definitely learning from those. So it wasn't the first two races were rough, and I made some mistakes, but I definitely learned from them.
So from the perspective that we watched, as the fans of the sport, we could see the TV broadcast, and unfortunately, in particular, these early races that we mentioned, that they're focusing on the racing at the front. So on the Zolder broadcast, for example, we saw that you had some damage on your nose. Do you remember what the situation was, how that came about? Because we never found out in the end.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, yeah. So what happened is, I think it was the first race, or the first lap of the race. Obviously, it's chaotic. Everyone's scrapping for position. And we went into the farthest corner. I think it's like fifth corner from the end. It's a hairpin right-hander at Zolder. And I think it was Gosha and Esme. They ended up, I think it was those two. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there was two cars basically that came together in front of us. And it was Vivian and I was just behind Vivian, and I had to run on her through the flat out like right left section that was just before that. And so I got a run, and then the chaos started happening in front of us, and they, cars crashing into each other. So I think Vivian broke much earlier than I was expecting her to. And so I was like full lock, like just trying to stop the car. And unfortunately wasn't able to stop in time. So I at least tried to hit her square, like straight. So I wouldn't obviously, damage her car and damage my car further. But it pushed her off the road and dented in my front nose. And so because of that, I got a drive-through penalty. And it's a little hard to recover from a drive-through penalty when the races are only, 30 minutes long. So that was kind of a death sentence for me.
Yeah, they are. Those are some short races, but in better memories, you got your points scored at Misano. That was your first points of the season. How much of a relief was that to get those points on the board?
Oh, big relief for sure. We're all obviously under a lot of pressure throughout the season because we do have reserve drivers, and they can replace you at any time, if you're not performing or making too many mistakes. So it was, it was a question in everyone's mind on like, how am I looking right now? So it was a little stressful, but I just knew that if I could put my head down and not make any mistakes, that I could finish in the points. So it just finally came together at Misano, and so I was also very happy.
And it wasn't just finishing in the points, so you started down in about 15th place, I think it was, and finished in P8. That's quite a march through the field. How was it from the cockpit?
It was awesome. I got a good bit of them on the start because I got a great start, and I started to figure it out, and I got a great start later in season 2, I think at Assen as well. So just started to kind of get the feel of the clutch down. And I think doing so many shifter kart starts, honestly probably helped with that, even though that is a hand clutch. So got a good start, and then just tried to, keep a good pace and wait for others to make mistakes and rely on, my good conditioning. So that way, when they're getting tired in the end, I was still ready to go. And so it just worked out, and I was able to finish well.
You saw, we saw on the timing screens, it was Sarah Moore that was ahead of you, and you're saying going to the end, and then you overtook her for 8th place on that last lap. Do you remember anything from that?
I'm trying to remember, where did I overtake her at? It was either, I guess at turn 7, it's like the left hand going back. I think that's where it was, if I can remember right. I don't know, it's so hard to remember play by play for all the races because there's so much going on, but I think that's where it was. I think it was, I think it's turn 7. Yeah, it's left hand turn 7. I think is where.
Yeah, well, there is so much going on, and with the races being so short, the replays were few and far between. Unfortunately, hopefully that's something that gets improved for this year. So
I will mention that to them. I will make sure.
Yes, you'll be my inside girl for that. So. In better still memories, Assen, you were just rapid there. Obviously, you've got a bit of a bad memory because you had another penalty. Yeah, so talk us through that weekend, because that would have been a weekend of the biggest mixed emotions.
Yeah, it was, I think at the beginning, it was a lot. I came into the season as literally the least experienced driver on the W Series grid. I think I had 12 races and in a car that they recognized, versus the next person was like 26. So I was like less than half of the next person. And I'm like, all right, let's go. So the karting racing obviously really, really helped with the overtaking, but I think it was just like, there was a lot going on. It was a big event, and I just made those mistakes in the first 2 races, and learning, obviously getting a full season in a single seater too is something I hadn't done yet. So I just made mistakes in the beginning, and then Assen, I had good momentum coming from, Norris Ring and Misano, and was just trying to, stay in those. I think I was in top 10 in points at that point. And so I was trying to do well going in, and yeah, made the error of starting in the wrong pit box before the race, because what happened is Piria had a problem with her car. And so she wasn't out for the actual formation lap. And so I'd left a gap for her. And then once we actually came around to take the green flag, she was there and had gotten the car fixed. And I think default, I just like left the space and didn't realize it. So I started farther back than I was supposed to. And even though that technically farther back is worse for me, but they, the people behind me also had to start one farther back. So that's why they ended up giving me the drive-through penalty, which was not ideal. So yeah, it wasn't great. But then the reverse grid race the next day, I knew I had good pace, and I had kept the momentum going. I recognized that I made mistakes, and I just tried to focus on what I need to do to have a good performance, and not focus on, oh my gosh, this and oh my gosh, that, and was able to just really, really get a great start and put my head down. And really, like a few laps in, I thought that I was going to be able to actually win the race, because I was doing well. I was catching Sarah and Megan. And then the car went into limp mode actually for, I think it was 2 laps, or at least 1. And so I was like, I almost came in actually, because we had separated ourselves from, like, because there was like Megan and Sarah and me a little ways off them, and then the rest of the pack fighting. So I was like, okay, if I can just keep pacing this pace and get around those guys, and then like get away from everyone else, that'd be great. And then I was like, oh my gosh, it was like it was almost like it's a very like disheartening feeling, because you're just like, please car, just keep going. And it just went into limp mode there for a little while, and I was able to just keep going, and it eventually went away the next lap. So, but by then I'd lost ground on Megan and Sarah, and then the safety car came out and everyone went back up, and it was a scrap to the end. So, but it ended up working out, and I was still able to finish in 3rd place. So it was a fun race.
You had to put your elbows out a little bit as well right at the end there, because you were down in 4th place on with, I think 1 lap to go or 2 laps to go after the safety car came in. And then you I think it's Alice that overtook you, I think, late on. And
no, Alice had gotten around me at that point, and then it was Emma. Was it Emma? Yeah, because Emma went to go try and pass me in turn 1, and she overshot a bit, and I stuck back underneath and was able to hold her off until the end. But I think Alice had overtaken me at that point. I think she was in 2nd or 3rd.
That's a lot of pressure to have. That was such a great race to rewatch though as well. And you mentioned before that you seemed to get it together. So of course the lightning start, and I've had to rewatch it in slow-mo because I was like, that must have been a jump start. You were so quick off the line.
Well, you know what it was is I was like so stressed about getting a proper start. And the reason why I think like the day before when I started in the wrong grid spot, I was so focused on making sure I looked at the lights correctly, because with DTM, they had done the start a little bit different a couple times. Like once, I think it was like the lights would go 1, 2, 3, all off or something, or all on and all off. And I had the issue in Hockenheim on the start, the first race, where I didn't even go anywhere because the car was stuck in the queue. But so I was like, I need to get a good start. If I can get a good start, I can, my race pace is usually always better than my qualifying. So I was like, I just need to get a good start. And I was so focused on that. And then in the reverse grid, I was just like, okay, like I need to make this happen. And it just worked out.
Indeed, yeah, taking 5 places off the off the starting line is a pretty good start. So Shea Hilbrook isn't in it this season. She's retiring from racing at the moment, concentrating on her family, and
she's still doing some stuff, but she's mostly she's the team manager for Hickson Motorsports right now. So she actually, that's the team I just ran with last week at Daytona.
Yeah,
and so she's like full on like businesswoman. Like she just bought they just have a new her and her husband just bought a new shop, or like they bought the team, I think is how it works. And so she's got her own shop now in Florida. Like she's got a baby, she's running all those things. So she's just like power woman on fire right now.
That sounds like a superhero.
Supermom right now.
Supermom Holbrook. Well, yeah, so Shea isn't racing in WSeries this season, so the US flag is just for you now. Do you feel that's gonna increase the pressure? You've got an American race after all, or is that something that you don't really think about?
I guess like I'm not really thinking of it as a negative. I'm thinking of it as a positive, because I'm feeling like this is awesome. I get to be the only one to represent the US, and then when we go to COTA, it's going to be amazing because I've got so many people here in the States that are like, we want to come watch this race. And they were all super, super bummed in 2020 when it got canceled, obviously, and they couldn't. So I am more excited than anything else.
That's great. Well, we talk about your progress through the season. So back on the reverse grid race briefly. So you didn't slip back at all, really, in that. You got up to 3rd place. You kept there. Do you think that was a sign that you had the pace? You've got the pace. If you didn't have some of those mistakes that you mentioned, that you would have scored a lot more?
I think so. I think just making those mistakes, I'm definitely held me back. And then I actually had the fastest time in the reverse grid race. So I had the fastest lap of the race, and I'm like, and it was by myself too. So that for me was like a confidence boost. To be like, hey, actually, like I can do this, and I don't need to be chasing someone. I can put the lap together on my own. I just need to put my head down and not make mistakes, and just be kind of in that zone. And so that was, I think it was a good thing from my own like mentality that did happen. And yes, the mistakes are unfortunate, but I am actually really glad that they happen now and not later on when the consequences could be much higher.
Do you think qualifying is not a mistake necessarily, but a weak point? You never qualified higher than 10th place, I don't think it was. Is that something that
100%.
Is that something you've worked on? I don't know how you can work on it without racing the cars. It's obviously the simulator, but do you think if you nail that, then you're going to be in a championship fight for 2021?
I think that qualifying is definitely one of the points that I've really been focusing on improving. That is something that I have room to grow for sure. I'm doing a lot on trying to improve that, and I think I am getting better at it. So I'm feeling very positive for this season. As far as fighting for the championship, it's hard to say. I mean, I still have quite a lot of catch up to play. I think to some of the top girls like Jamie and Beitska and Emma and Alice, they've got so much experience that it's going to be hard. It's going to be very hard, but I don't think that it's completely out of the question that if I continue on like the upward trend that I have been, and I keep working on those things that are maybe not my strengths right now, that it is possible to maybe be in the top 5 at some point in the season.
Well, I think you were in the top 5. Was it at the Assen non-reverse grid race for the fastest laps? You were really quick there.
Yeah, I think I just need to keep my head down, keep working, and keep improving all the points that I know are places for me to improve.
Well, 2021 is going to be a hell of a year. So WSeries focusing at the moment. Formula One, that's a pretty big deal. How did you handle the news when you heard that you'd be supporting Formula One this year?
I mean, I'm just like the other girls. I'm so excited. It's gonna be awesome, and I'm really thankful to W Series that they were able to make that pairing and give us such an insane platform to be able to perform on.
Was it something that you had suspected was going to happen, or was it just a complete shock to you when you had, I don't know, been an email or something to be like, this is what's happening this year?
It wasn't too much of a surprise because we'd heard whisperings and we were like thinking that it might happen, and I guess we were all like, secretly all hoping that it was going to happen. So it was just I think it wasn't a surprise, but everyone was very happy when it was final.
So we've got some amazing tracks. It wasn't like it was a bad championship that you had with the 6 races you had in 2019, but the 2021 calendar list is fantastic. So I've got an inkling that COTA might be the race you're most excited for this season. Is there any particular tracks that you are holding in high esteem?
Definitely. I mean, COTA is going to be awesome because it's going to be a home race. As far as like iconic tracks that I'm excited to drive on is really, I'd say Spa is probably top right now. Racing on Spa is going to be so cool. It's gonna be like, one of those moments in your life where you're like, you will remember forever. So I'm really excited.
I can't express how jealous I am that you'll be able to go around Spa in an F3 car. So
we need a double-seater W Series car and give rides.
Sabre, if you make that happen, I want in that car.
I want in that car. So yeah, I'll see. Who knows?
But those tracks, so have you driven any of them? I know you've done some of the esports stuff, but which of those tracks have you driven on? And do you think that'll be none of them?
Yeah, it's so European tracks, I hadn't even driven a car. I'd driven a couple karting ones before, but before W Series started, I had never driven a European car track ever. So it's going to be, obviously I'm going to sim a lot, do a ton of preparation that way, but it's going to be a new experience for me. I've been on COTA, so that is a positive, but never been to Mexico, the Mexican track. I've been to Mexico City, and it's the elevation. It's going to be cool to see who can survive. Good news is the race isn't too long, so we should be fine. But it definitely makes a difference with the air that thin.
Yeah, the altitude's going to be a bit of a strain on the engines as well. But what a season finale that's going to be! Could you imagine getting on the podium in that baseball stadium?
In Mexico would be one of the most insane because I feel like they're similar to the Italian fans, right? When they go to like Monza, and it's just like they are so excited, and they're so like they're super nice, and they're just like happy to be there and happy to be engaged. So if I were to get on the podium in Mexico, it would be pretty special.
Well, let's hope that happens. But talking about COTA and New Mexico City, which is slightly tied to the question I'm about to ask, how can you quantify the difference between those American circuits and the European circuits? Is there something when you're on them that you can just tell this is a European track?
I guess not necessarily, because there's so many tracks that have different characteristics. Like we have COTA here, and that's like absolutely completely different compared to like Mid-Ohio. So it's, for us, we have so many different variations, and I guess maybe with European tracks, maybe sometimes depending on where they're at, they don't have as much elevation change as a lot of our American ones do. But then again, it depends on the track. Maybe like how certain safety barriers are set up or stuff like that. I think that's different depending on what station body like owns the track and everything. So that's always a variation. But each track is so unique that I don't know. It's hard to say which. If you just blindly closed your eyes and got on a racetrack, whether you could say it was American or European.
Yeah, well, we see about those elevation changes when you hit the Red Bull Ring in Spa. Those hills are going to be a lot of fun for you overtaking.
It's like, how do you quantify it? Like, because I'm like thinking, okay, maybe we have a lot of tracks that are elevation change, but then so do you guys. So it's like, I don't know.
That's a fair enough answer. So, talking about American tracks, and we're recording this at the start of February, and last week for you, American tracks, the big one, Daytona. You went there for the 24-hour race to watch, and before that, you were racing in the Mazdas. Tell us all about that.
It was so much fun. Like, maybe some of the closest racing that I've been a part of since I left karting, because it's just, the draft is worth like 3 seconds a lap. So if you're off by yourself, you're pretty much yourself for a Sunday drive, because you are not going to go anywhere without a buddy. So it was a lot. It was different, and the track, the cars, they're quite a bit slower than what I have been driving lately. So it was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to be really patient on some things, let the car set, and it also has ABS, which I'm not used to. That was the first car I've ever raced that had ABS. So that was different too. And I'd never been first time at Daytona. So it was a whole big thing, but it was so much fun, and like learning how important strategy was in pack racing like that. Like, I'm sure it's like similar, people say it's similar to how, NASCAR is sometimes with, trying to predict like which row's going, who's going high, who's going low, like, and then learning the trick of like the position at which you're drafting on another car. You can either speed them up or slow them down just by being in different locations around the car. It was really cool to learn, because it was just something new. So I had a ton of fun, and it was flat out from like green flag to the end. Like, you didn't know who was going to win. And like you saw in the first race, we had, my teammates were 1-2 for like the entire race. And then the safety car brought us all, even closer together. And they ended up, they were winning, and they ended up like ninth, like fourth or ninth or something, and going to the checkered flag. So it was absolutely insane. And I really, really enjoyed it.
Oh, sounds great. And then you watched the race. You were there for the 24-hour race because, well, when in Daytona, you've got to go and do that if you're around there. So you say you hadn't been there before, so is this your first 24-hour race to watch? You were there overnight, saw you in the Ferris wheel and all sorts.
Yeah, so it was my first Daytona 24 in person. I mean, I'd obviously seen it on television, but that was my first time there to experience it. And I had, all these people telling, oh, you got to go do this and try this restaurant and go watch here. And you got at 11:11 or something, they set off all the fireworks. And so like, that was a surprise too. And then they're like, you got to go on the Ferris wheel because you can just see everything. So it was a whole big experience. And I was super excited to be able to do that with obviously some of the people that stayed from the MX5 team. And I ended up staying up till like 4 a.m. like at the track, trying to just keep watching the cars. And I'm like, I should probably go to sleep. So I did eventually leave and then came back the next day. But it was really cool to see that in person for the first time, and see a lot of my friends that were actually competing in it and see them do well. So it was awesome.
I can see that you're still riding the high from it. You can see it all in your face. It just looks like another memory that's a terrific year that you're going to have. You say you're looking forward to Spa. If this time last year we said you're going to be racing at Spa, at Kota, at Daytona, that would be, quite a thing to look forward to.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have believed you. I've been like, well, maybe, I don't know.
But more seriously though, Sabre, we witnessed on your Instagram story you stealing a car that you tried to pass off as you left your keys, but you were definitely there with a person to say, can you take the keys from that car? Do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, so I've never ever locked my keys in the car before. And we went to this awesome, cute little restaurant called the Ormond Garage. And we finished dinner, and I came out. So it's a rental car, so I was unexperienced with the operation of it. And the car lets you pop the trunk without actually unlocking it. So I popped the trunk, and I actually grabbed a jacket out of the back, and then went to go close the trunk. The keys were still in the trunk. So the keys were locked in the trunk, the car was locked, and I was stuck. So thank goodness, the people that we were at dinner with is Haggerty, and they're so sweet, so nice. They've been letting us hang out all weekend, and they have Haggerty roadside assistance. So they just, called them up, and within maybe 30 minutes or so, they were there, and the nice truck driver Michael was extremely funny and taught us how to break into a car. So that was useful information if I ever locked myself out again. But yeah, it was a funny end to the weekend.
It makes it even more memorable. Well, Sabre, you've been honestly great. You've been very candid, but there's one final question that I have to ask you, and it's a little bit cheesy, but I'm sure you must have heard it. What is the worst lightsaber pun that you've heard?
I don't know. I guess the worst ones that I think are like when they ask me if I want some hummus because of the Sabre hummus. Those are pretty bad. But literally so Brian Hickson that owns Hickson Motorsports that I raced for last week, he actually sent me a real, not real, but a lightsaber to me this month. I have a real lightsaber now. So that was pretty cute. But yeah, usually the ones that are kind of more dad joke that you're like, oh really, come on, is when they're joke about the hummus.
Well, it sounds like though you've got this year, despite the poor dad jokes, you've got Spa, COTA, Daytona, and a lightsaber. That's a pretty good year.
Pretty good start. It's a pretty good start.
Well, Sabre, we honestly all at the Grandstand really, really hope you have a terrific season. You've extremely down to earth, you're extremely personable, and you're going from strength to strength. So with the Formula One partnership, I'm sure it's going to be an even bigger year this year and next year. So we wish you all the best, and thank you for being on the Grandstand.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me. Have you been told, by the way, that you kind of look and talk like Daniel Ricciardo?
The amount of strangers who've come and say, are you like a budget Daniel Ricciardo and stuff? I'm like, I've had worse insults before.
No, really, it really does. You do remind me of Daniel Ricciardo very, very much.
Well, I'll take that as a compliment, Sabre. That's.
I mean, I would. I want to be like Daniel Ricciardo.
Hell of a likable guy, right?
Yes.